today in celebration of life of Ralph Inwood Jr. Our hope is that all that is said and done is pleasing in the sight of the Lord, and of course serve as a comfort for you, the family and friends gathered on this day. We begin this gathering of remembrance with words of tribute following the candle lighting, which we will do at this time. The candle represents our grief. The pain of losing you is intense. It reminds us of the depth of our love for you. This candle represents our courage to confront our sorrow, to comfort each other, to change our lives. The candle we light in your memory for the times we laughed, the times we cried, the times we were angry with each other, the silly things you did, the caring and joy you gave us. This candle we light for our love. We light this candle that you light, that your light will always shine with our family and friends. We cherish a special place in our hearts that will always be reserved for you. We thank you for the gift your living brought to each of us. We love you. We remember you. At this time, those who would like to share tribute words come forward.
So I'll have to get it started. And Darlene, I did make some notes. I think back on when I first met Ralph. No idea how long ago that was. It was at the bowling alley. Those of you that know him won't be surprised at that. So we started out as bowling buddies, and we've been bowling buddies on the Oreos bowling team at Fairview forever, for as long as he was bowling. And then I started running into him at the Red Cross there in Fairport, where he would spend a lot of time either at the greeting station, or I think his favorite station was back in the canteen, handing out the food. And ultimately, surprisingly, he enjoyed talking. A little bit, anyway. I think that's a family trait, by the way. But that's where I've been with Ralph for the many years. And, of course, we all know that he was a teacher. 33 years. Started out in Marion school system. Then came to Fairport School System and spent the rest of his years there. Mostly with the sixth graders. And I don't know, I always thought sixth graders were kind of crazy. So bless his heart for staying that long with sixth graders. But one of the things that he would share stories with multiple times, I mean, he had his stories that he would always talk about. One of them was about kids that needed help. He would take extra time if he saw that they weren't getting the attention that he thought they should be getting. He would give it to them and help them along. Always the teacher. He and I were talking one day, and somehow we got off onto Brussels sprouts. He says, "Do you know where they come from?" I said, "Well, of course, a garden. Or you can go to Wegmans and you get them in a little bag. That's what a Brussels sprout looks like." He said, "No." So we ended up getting in the car, driving to Marion, to the Dutchland food store, and he goes over to the produce department and he gets this stalk that looks like maybe it's a banana stalk, but instead it's a Brussels sprouts stalk. Never believed, I never would have known that Brussels sprouts grow on a stalk out of the ground similar to a banana. So, he's teaching me. I learned. Bowling wise, every time I bowl, even as recent as this past Tuesday, again for the bowlers, the 5 pin is one of the most frustrating pins to leave when you're bowling. And early on, Ralph was always the coach. So he's behind me and he says, Glenn, nobody misses the 5 pin. Let me tell you, that was years and years ago. And to this day, I hear it coming out of his mouth. And those of you that, if you picked up one of the cards with this picture on it, that look is the famous Ralph look as far as I'm concerned. I captured that one day in Henrietta. He and I were having lunch at Cracker Barrel. And I don't know what it was that we were talking about, but he just had that look, and I just fortunately clicked it and got it. But he was quite the guy. Ralph, what are your favorite things? Orbaker's hamburgers. Williamson. He raved about his hamburger and raved about it. Finally, I said, let's go. Well, I didn't realize how far it was. So we went out to Orbaker's and we had a hamburger, and we've been back a few times. Let's see, the other thing I wanted to mention, you'd never guess that he was a history buff. The real risk there was ever getting him started. Because, Ralph, buddy, your stories are long. But the amazing thing was that he would talk about the 1800s like he was there. And I think he was, maybe in a different body, but he's an amazing guy with that. One thing that I learned later on that I never really saw, but read about, that he was a chess player. Never saw him play chess. He and I never talked about it. I'm not a chess player. But he taught kids at school how to play chess and ultimately organized chess tournaments in the school. Amazing. Amazing. And then the last thing, maybe 2 weeks before he died, we were talking about things. What's going on? How's he feeling? What's happening? And he would often, he and I were 10 years apart. He will turn 92 in a month, just under a month, and I will turn 81, so I guess we were 11 years apart. But he was always joking me about, he's the old man and I'm the young whippersnapper. But everything was about teaching. So about 2 weeks ago, when we were just talking about a lot of things, got kind of deep, and he just looked at me. And he said, "You're not that far behind me. Are you learning anything about all of this?" I said, "Yeah, Ralph, I am. I'm watching it. I'm living it with you. I'm learning it." So to the end, he was the teacher. I would invite anyone else that would like to say a few words, either stand up where you are or come up here, either one would be great.
Didn't expect to say anything. And my name is Pam Beard. I'm a distant cousin of Ralph. But Ralph and Jane, I have to say, we often spent some holidays together, and we really enjoyed their company. And oftentimes, we would have a lot of discussions about history and family, and he was really into discovering all of that, and he saved many things about it. I thought he was a great person. I think I became an attorney, and I think he ultimately wanted to do that as well as being a teacher. So I think he had an affinity and liked to talk to me about that. But I have to say, Ralph and Jane, we always enjoyed your company and really appreciated knowing him throughout life. So thank you, and it was nice spending time with you.
I'm Camille Zitz, my grandpa. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was really small, and I have some really fantastic memories. Just silly things. I remember when they had that station wagon with the wood on the side, I think like all Suburbia had, and I just thought that was like the coolest car I'd ever seen. And I remember all the apples, so many apples. I think that's why I kind of don't eat apples at all. I ate a ton of apples growing up, but always coming. Things like, you know, oranges in our stocking for Christmas every year is something that always remembers. And, you know, as you get older and you start thinking about, you know, why that was a thing, right? And thinking about the time that our grandparents grew up in, you know, having an orange was a big deal. Lifesaver books, things that, you know, as an adult I just take for granted, and some traditions that I started with my children. I think, you know, I lived with my mom for a good chunk of my life, and then went to live with my father, and my grandparents were always supportive. I went to college. You know, my grandfather was above the moon for me going to school. I wanted to be an attorney. I had this big plan, and then I met my husband, and we got married, and, you know, my grandparents were always there to support me, sometimes financially. Getting married at 19 and 20 was, turns out, not the smartest financial decision people could make, but they always had my back. And then ultimately went back to school, and as a couple of people have said, my grandfather loved to talk about history. I wish I had leaned in a little more to those conversations. He was super excited when I became a social studies teacher. And then when I told him that I had to get my master's, and we talked about, you know, what I was going to get my master's in, I think I broke his heart when I told him I was going to get a master's in administration. He told me I was going to the dark side. But always supporting me, and you know, when I was thinking about leaving a position, you know, still going to the Democrat and Chronicle and telling me about all the positions that were available. You know, and the last 10 years, I didn't spend as much time as I should have. Just kind of take people for granted. You just don't anticipate this. And if I would say anything to the young people in this space, the time goes by so fast. I'm realizing that, you know, I have a grandchild now. It goes by so fast. So take those times, listen to the stories, listen to the history, try to lock in. And I'm just very grateful for everything that my grandfather taught me, and I run into people all the time that, you know, he was kind of like a airport celebrity, you know, again, things you don't appreciate or understand when you're young. You know, my superintendent, you know, I had to tell him that I was supposed to be in this week for this, and I sent him the obituary, and he said, sounds like he was one of the good ones. That's absolutely what my grandpa was. He really was one of the good ones, so, thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz. My last name's Lazaro. Long stories began later. My husband's in Nigeria, born in Kidmore. However, I am the privilege of being the oldest, and I think in some ways all of us are intelligent, but I stay with my kids. Miraculous is my home, so therefore, my grandchildren, my daughter, my son Esau, who's here, and Jacob, whom we gratefully had to leave, had the privilege of being a spoiled grandchildren. So, but one thing as the oldest, I have fond memories of being the oldest, being able to share a lot of the intros to our lives because I'm the oldest. By the way, my mother and father just celebrated July 6th, the 73rd anniversary. The joke was, my father didn't like it when I surprised him and everybody came to the 50th anniversary. Some of you were there for that. And he didn't like surprises. He didn't like parties much either. But I always had a joke with him each year because I celebrated the anniversary, even if he didn't want to. But he liked to just be with my mom. So that's the pressure of love. You know, he wanted to be with her. He didn't like anniversaries much. But I said I would pay for the 75th. So even this year, although mom said by herself with me, that was her way, I still told her, you know, you just got 2 more to go. And I'll say I'm on a cruise because I'm not going to run on a cruise. But anyway, but the history was, I think, is important in all of us. And one thing I know is each and every one of his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and by the way, there are 3 great-grandchildren. And I can't wait for another. So if it wasn't for, you know, our strength, you know, our love for each other, even though we're far away, it would have happened. But he was never going to look. I just sort of feel a little bit lonely. And we got the courage, because he wasn't easy, but he was all faith. And thank you.
Amen. The Apostle Paul, in the letter to Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 5, to be exact, encourages us all with the knowledge that to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. We know Ralph's work here is done. And he is present with the Lord. For those of us who remain, we gather here today not to mourn, and as much as we remember Ralph Dinter Jr., the father, the grandfather, the great-grandfather, the brother, the son, and the friend. We remember him as a teacher who took special care to provide extra attention to those who may have suffered from various life challenges. We remember the Ralph who, when dealt lemon, he made lemonade. We remember the Ralph who loved history, coin collecting, bowling, chess, and of course his family, friends, and his dear wife, Jane. I was happy to serve as both Ralph and Jane's pastor when they attended Salem, and I was the pastor there. And I had the privilege of remember Ralph, the private Ralph, who displayed love to most all who crossed his path, especially during his time at the Red Cross as a volunteer. Above it all, though, we remember Ralph Dentrop Jr., who shared his life with us. For Jane, his children, Elizabeth, Deborah, Jacqueline, and Philip, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and our dear friends. We thank you all for sharing Ralph with us. It is so often on these occasions we can internalize and long for opportunities past and gone, where we could have, should have, would have, if we just had more time. Nevertheless, again, Ralph's work here is done. Yet for those of us who are alive and remain, it is now up to all of us to carry on. The time is now to create a plan and to be all that you can be. Yes, you've heard that somewhere before, I know. There's no song that says it best. If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer someone with a word or song, if I can show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. Yes, friends, life is short and fleeting, yet we can do our best to get the most out of it for both ourselves and others. There are many who will heap on you all sorts of rules and regulations that they say you must follow to win the prize. Yet I say that your first priority should be simply to live a life of purpose. Longevity indeed has its purpose also, and most will endeavor to live a long and fruitful life. Yet in this game called life, finishing early does not necessarily negate winning either. In the life journey, there are at least two schools of thought. One which equates our elders as being one-dimensional and negates the fact that our elders too traveled the paths that we who were perhaps younger traveled. From birth to infancy, adolescence, adulthood, and of course, they having been granted to the privilege to reach their senior golden years, as Ralph did. They all had a life. Ralph had a life. Then there are these others who think that the ultimate tragedy is to pass away at a younger age. Yet I want to assure you that a short life does not dictate, nor does it equate to tragedy. No, instead it may be just an indication that you just simply finished early. Today in society, you see that in the media and of course in the news and politics, it seems that anyone can be famous for just about anything. The phrase used to be 15 minutes of fame. Yet lately it seems folks have taken that 15 minutes and added days, months, some even years to it. We have these reality TV shows everywhere, bringing us into the view of folks' so-called private lives. And then all of a sudden they are considered famous for whatever reason. Sometimes individuals become famous for just living, and fame finds them. And then there are those, at other times, these individuals that have positioned themselves for fame. They sought it, thought it, or some have even bought it out. Yet, just like that old candid camera show, I hope some of you remember that, and I'm not the only one old enough to remember that. But there was a line from that show that says, you never know when, at some time, somewhere, someone will come up upon you and let you know to smile because you are now famous. If you wish to increase your odds of not becoming famous, though, you can assume a life of ease, hide in the shadows of your own space, and do as little as possible so that no one ever notices you. Yet, as one of our former presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, once said, never throughout history as a man who lived a life of ease, left a name worth remembering. Yes, you can place yourself on an island and become an island to yourself. A life of ease where no one is affecting you and you are affecting no one. But we know this was not the case with Ralph. Just think of what the world would be like if we all, like Ralph, just started practicing kindness and warm hospitality to all of those we encounter. If we decided to start providing love to all and to one another. If we simply showed kindness. If we just treated others as we would have them treat us. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Practicing kindness, showing hospitality, loving on each other, and simply doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. Maybe you've heard that somewhere also. Certainly Ralph knew that phrase. Certainly Ralph dealt with all of these things at some point in his life. Yet again, we who are alive and remain can honor Ralph's memory if we too begin today practicing living lives of purpose. I believe that if we follow the example of Ralph, we too can all rest assured that as we depart this life, we too will be present with the Lord, and we also will lead a life of impact. Ralph yet lives through our memories. And our prayer today is that those memories serve as a blessing. There's a poem which says it best by Margaret Mead. And I'll close with that. To the living I am gone. To the sorrowful I will never return. To the angry I was cheated. But to the happy I'm at peace. And to the faithful I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore gazing at a beautiful sea, as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never have gone. As we close, this is your time to participate with me. Can we all say we remember him? Thank you. But we are going to go a step further and say we remember Ralph. Let's say we remember Ralph. In the rising of the sun and its going down, in the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, in the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, in the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, in the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, in the beginning of the year and when it ends, when we are weary and in need of strength, when we are lost and sick at heart, when we have joys we yearn to share. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us, as we. Now I ask that you stand, and we will have Amazing Grace played, and we will conclude this service at graveside, but that will be a private ceremony for families.